Most families lose their wealth by the third generation. The first generation earns it. The second manages what's left. The third inherits almost nothing. Sociologists call it the three-generation curse. It destroys families in America, Canada, the UK, Australia, every single day. But one community breaks this pattern consistently. Their wealth doesn't just survive 3 generations, it compounds. It multiplies. Grandparents to children to grandchildren. And it keeps growing. And the reason why has been hiding in plain sight for nearly 2,000 years. Last month, after rent, bills, subscriptions you forgot about, Amazon purchases that felt smart. How much was actually left? Be honest. Because I used to stare at my banking app every month, completely confused. I was working hard, I wasn't blowing money. And yet, yes, it was always gone. That's when I started studying one of the most remarkable financial patterns researchers have documented for over a century. Jewish families, not their religion, not their politics. Their relationship with money, across generations. What I found changed how I think about everything. It came down to 12 habits. Habits that shaped how they thought about money before they ever made it, protected it once they had it, and passed it down so the next generation didn't just inherit wealth, they inherited the knowledge of how to keep it growing. I'm going to walk you through all 12. We'll talk about investing, debt, spending, community, and how to build something that outlasts you and stay for habit 9. Just because it's the one that will make you realize you've been getting something wrong every single week without knowing it. Let's get into it. Lower East Side, New York City, early 1900s. Tenement buildings packed so tight you could hear your neighbor breathing. Pushcart vendors from sunrise. The smell of bread, fish, and ambition all at once. This is where Elias Lavine started. $40, a worn coat, and a mind full of habits passed down from his father, who learned them from his father, in a village in Eastern Europe where one bad financial decision could destroy a family. These habits weren't invented in comfort. They were forged under pressure. Elias started with a trading stall, then a small shop. Nothing glamorous, nothing that would make the papers. But Elias wasn't building for the papers. He was building for his grandchildren. Inside that household, the real architect of the family's wealth wasn't Elias, it was Miriam. While Elias traded, Miriam ran the household economy. She tracked every coin in, every coin out, with a discipline most people today would find uncomfortable. She had one saying her children heard so many times it became part of their DNA. A coin saved is a seed planted. Not spent, not enjoyed, planted. Every dollar you hold today is quietly preparing to grow into something larger. Miriam understood compound growth before anyone around her had a name for it. She wasn't depriving her family. She was engineering their future. Her son David grew up at that dinner table. Every Friday, the Shabbat table, money was discussed the way other families discuss the weather. Openly, honestly, no shame. No secrecy. By the time David was a teenager, he already understood budgeting, negotiation, assets versus liabilities, and why debt was something you avoided like a disease. He carried those habits into business, into real estate, into 47th Street's Diamond District, a world built entirely on trust, reputation, and a handshake between people who had earned each other's confidence. Not contracts first, character first. Then Rachel arrived. Rachel Katz was smart, hardworking, came from a good family. But nobody had ever taught her money the way the Lavines lived it. In her house growing up, money was celebrated when it came and stressed about when it was gone. Never managed with intention. When she married into the Lavine family, she felt like she'd walked into a foreign country. The dinner table conversations made her uncomfortable. Miriam's expense tracking felt extreme. David reinvesting instead of upgrading his lifestyle felt almost boring. But Rachel kept watching. And slowly she realized what she'd always called boring was the most powerful financial strategy she'd ever seen up close. Rachel is you, the person who was never taught this, who had to learn it as an adult, who looked at this family and thought, why did nobody ever show me this before? You also need to know Nathan Lavine, the family elder, the man they called when a decision needed more than spreadsheets. Nathan quoted the Talmud the way other people quote coaches or mentors, not to impress anyone, But because he believed the answers to modern financial problems were already figured out 2,000 years ago by people facing far harder circumstances than ours. Nathan's voice will be with us throughout this video. And then there's Solomon. Solomon Goldberg, the neighbor, earned well, spent freely. From every angle, looked like he was winning. Solomon is not a villain. Solomon is a warning. He made the same mistake millions make every day. He confused looking wealthy with being wealthy, income with security, a full life today with a funded future tomorrow. We'll come back to Solomon throughout this video, every single time, to show you exactly what happens when one of these 12 habits gets skipped. Not to judge him, to make sure his story doesn't become yours. Most people spend their entire financial lives decorating their house. The Lavine family spent theirs building a foundation nothing could shake. Here are the first 4 habits that made it unbreakable. Habit 1, the Talmudic portfolio. Never put everything in one place. Nathan Lavine used to sit with young David at the kitchen table and draw 3 circles on a piece of paper. 1 circle for land, 1 circle for business, 1 circle for cash. Equal sizes, every single time. David, a man who puts everything in one place, is not an investor. He is a gambler, and the house always wins eventually. This was not Nathan's idea. It was recorded in the Babylonian Talmud nearly 2,000 years ago. Divide your wealth into thirds. 1/3 in physical assets, 1/3 in business and trade, 1/3 liquid, meaning accessible, meaning ready. In your life today, real estate or REITs, index funds and investments. An emergency fund that's always within reach. Here's why it matters. When 2008 hit, families with everything in investments lost everything. Families with the 3-circle structure lost 1/3 at most, and used their liquid cash to buy assets at historic lows while everyone else panicked. You don't need to be wealthy to apply this. You need to be intentional. If your entire financial life runs paycheck to paycheck, no assets, no reserves, you're one unexpected crisis from starting over. Solomon Goldberg had everything in one place, his lifestyle. When it became unsustainable, there was nothing left to fall back on. Start with 3 circles, even if each one starts small. The structure matters more than the size. Habit 2, teach money early. The jar system that changes everything. Rachel watched Miriam sit down with her grandchildren, 5 and 7 years old. Miriam placed 3 glass jars on the table, gave each child their weekly allowance, and said 3 words: split it up. 1 jar for saving, 1 for investing, 1 for giving. Rachel watched those children deliberate over coins like they were making real financial decisions. Because they were. Miriam never rushed them, never took over, just watched, nodded, and let the lesson land. Rachel thought about her own childhood. No jars, no deliberation. Money arrived and disappeared, and nobody ever explained the machinery underneath it. That gap is one of the most expensive gaps in Western education. Here's the science behind the jars. Children who learn to categorize money before age 10 develop what psychologists call a savings identity. They see themselves as someone who manages money, not just spends it. Financial habits formed before 12 are significantly more durable than habits learned in adulthood. Think you missed the window? You didn't. The jars just look different as an adult. A savings account, a brokerage account, an automated charitable donation. Same principle. Split it before you spend it. Decide with intention before the money disappears into daily life. Automate the splits the day your paycheck lands. That's the financial education the school system never gave you. Habit 3. Debt is not normal. Treat it like the emergency it is: car payment. Normal. Credit card balance. Normal. Buy now, pay later. Completely normal. Student loans into your 40s. Just how it is. Sit down with Nathan Lavine for 5 minutes and he dismantles all of it with 1 sentence. The borrower is servant to the lender. And no servant ever built a dynasty. Here's the math simply. $3,000 on a credit card at 20% interest. Minimum payments only. You spend years paying it off and hand the bank over $2,000 extra. That money didn't go into savings, didn't go into investments, didn't go to your children's future. It went to a financial institution as the price of convenience. Now flip it. Invest that same $3,000 at 7% annual return for 30 years. It becomes over $22,000. Same money. Two completely different decisions. Two completely different financial lives. The Lavine family used a GAMOC, a community interest-free lending fund, when they needed to borrow. We'll get to that in Habit 5. But the principle is the same. Debt that costs interest is a leak in your financial system. You cannot fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom, no matter how fast you pour. Close the leak first. Everything else gets easier. Habit 4. The Shabbat table is a boardroom. Talk about money with your family. In most households Rachel had known growing up, money was either a source of tension or a topic adults hid from children entirely. Private. Sometimes shameful. Kids were shielded from it and released into adulthood, completely unprepared for it. In the Lavine household, the Friday Shabbat table was where the family strategized. About the week, about decisions made, what was working, what wasn't. Plans for the future. The children sat there, asked questions, and were never once told money wasn't their concern. Because in this family, money was everybody's concern. By the time David made his first real estate deals on 47th Street, he wasn't learning the principles for the first time. He'd been absorbing them since he was old enough to sit at a table. When was the last time you sat down with your partner, your family, even just yourself, and had an honest, strategic conversation about your financial position? Not an argument about a bill, a real conversation. Where you are, where you want to go, what decisions get you there. For most people, never. Or it always turns into a fight, so you stop trying. The Lavines made that conversation a weekly ritual, and the ritual became one of their most powerful wealth-building tools. Because wealth isn't only built in markets and accounts. It's built in decisions made together, with clarity and intention. You don't need a Shabbat tradition, you need a table, and a commitment to honesty. Start the conversation. If it's uncomfortable, good. That discomfort is the gap between where you are and where you're trying to go. The only way to close it is to walk straight through. Those are the first 4. The foundation. Everything else gets built on top of these. Now stay with me, because habits 5 through 8 are where most people lose their wealth even after they've built it. These are the protection habits, and habit 5 alone will completely change how you think about borrowing money. Once you hear it, you'll never look at a bank loan the same way again. Building wealth and protecting it, those are 2 completely different skills. Most people only learn the first one, and the next 4 habits are about the second. They're the reason the Lavine family's wealth survived market crashes, family transitions, and 3 full generations. And they're the habits most people skip entirely, right up until the moment they lose everything they built. Pay close attention. This is where most financial stories go wrong. Habit 5. The GAMOC. Access. Everything, own only what matters. Rachel had been with the Lavine family for about 2 years when she first heard the word GAMOC. She was sitting with Miriam one afternoon when a neighbor knocked on the door. The neighbor needed a significant sum of money, not a luxury, a genuine business shortfall. Rachel expected Miriam to point her to a bank. Instead, Miriam picked up the phone and made 2 calls. Within the hour, the neighbor had the money she needed. Just 0% interest, no credit check. Repayment built entirely on trust. No bank, no interest, no humiliation. Rachel sat there with her mouth open. What just happened? Miriam smiled. That is the GAMOC. It has kept this community standing for centuries. A GAMOC, pronounced GAMOC, is a community lending fund on a principle almost too simple to believe. Members contribute when they have surplus. Members borrow when they face hardship. They repay when they're able. No interest. No profit extracted from someone else's difficult moment. The only currency? Reputation and reciprocity. Here's what that does to wealth inside a community. Every dollar you pay a bank in interest leaves your community permanently. It flows to a financial institution and never returns. Every dollar that moves through a GAMOC stays inside the community. It helps one family, then another, then another. Collective wealth grows because nothing is being drained from it. You don't have a GAMOC in your neighborhood, that's fair. But the principle is available right now. Buy nothing groups. tool libraries, borrowing a ladder instead of buying one you'll use twice, splitting a bulk order with a neighbor, joining a community investment club. These are the same ancient principle. Access without unnecessary ownership. Trust as the foundation of financial cooperation. Before you buy anything, ask one question first. Can I access this without owning it? Ownership has hidden costs: storage, maintenance, insurance, depreciation. Access has almost none of those. The Lavines weren't connected to everything they owned, and they were connected to a community that gave them access to almost everything they needed. That freed up enormous capital that went straight into building wealth instead of maintaining possessions. Solomon owned everything, the best of everything, alone. When his money ran out, his possessions had depreciated, and his community ties had withered from years of taking without contributing. There was nobody to call. There was no gamak for Solomon because Solomon had never invested in one. Access builds community. Ownership builds isolation, and isolated wealth is fragile wealth. Habit 6. Invest with your values. Money follows meaning. David Lavine had one rule that confused people in his business circle. He would not invest in any business he couldn't look his children in the eye and explain. Not because he was naive, and because he understood that a family's reputation is one of its most valuable financial assets. And reputation is built or destroyed by where your money goes. In Jewish tradition, this has a name: Tikkun Olam, repairing the world. Here's what it looks like financially. 2 investors. Same amount of money, same discipline. One filters every decision through a single extra question. Does this create real value for real people? Over time, that investor doesn't just accumulate money. They accumulate reputation, relationships, and community standing. And when the market shakes, when uncertainty spreads, they have a network of people who want them to succeed because their success has always contributed to others. That's not sentiment, that's a network. And networks are wealth. A modern finance calls this ESG investing and treats it like a new idea. Jewish tradition has been practicing it for 2,000 years. You don't need a large portfolio to start. Every time you support a local business over a faceless corporation, that's Tikkun Olam. Every time you ask not just what does this cost, but what does this support, you're building the kind of financial reputation that compounds quietly across decades. Money follows meaning. That is not a spiritual phrase. That is a documented pattern in how wealth moves through communities over time. Habit 7. Chutzpah is a financial tool. Negotiate everything 47th Street. Manhattan, the Diamond District. One of the most concentrated hubs of jewelry and diamond trading in the world, dominated by Jewish merchants for generations. Walk through it and you notice immediately. Deals are made with handshakes. Trust is the currency. Relationships are the infrastructure. But something else defines that street. Something that defines Jewish business culture more broadly. Chutzpah, boldness, nerve, the willingness to ask for what you want without apologizing for asking. In Jewish culture, negotiating isn't rude. It's respectful. It's how business gets done. A merchant who accepts the first price offered isn't being polite. They're leaving value on the table. Now bring this into your life right now. How many bills are you paying that you have never once called to negotiate? Your internet, your phone plan, your insurance, your subscriptions, your gym. Every single one of those providers has a retention team whose entire job is to keep you as a customer. And the one thing that retention team responds to is a phone call from someone who asks, clearly, calmly, without apology, for a better rate. Rachel tried this in her second year with the Lavines, one afternoon. 3 phone calls, no shame. She cut her monthly outgoings by over $90. That's over $1,000 a year, from asking. The mindset shift is this. Negotiating is not a confrontation. It is a conversation between 2 parties who both want to reach an agreement. You are not taking anything from anyone. You are advocating for the fair value of your own money. Every bill you pay without questioning is a quiet agreement that the price you were given is the price you deserve. The Lavine family never made quiet agreements. They made informed ones. Pick up the phone this week. 1 call, ask for a better rate. And Solomon never negotiated. He paid whatever he was asked because he wanted to appear as someone for whom the price didn't matter. That performance cost him more than he ever stopped to calculate. Habit 8. Invest in your mind, the only asset nobody can take from you. Every time a young person in the Lavine family came to Nathan for financial advice, he asked the same question first. He'd lean forward, look them in the eye, and say, "Tell me, what do you know that nobody can take from you? Not what do you own, not what do you earn. What do you know?" This question came from a specific place in history. For centuries, Jewish communities across Europe could be expelled overnight, property seized, businesses destroyed, everything physical, gone by forces entirely outside their control. But knowledge couldn't be confiscated at a border. A doctor forced to flee one country could rebuild a practice in another. A merchant who understood trade and negotiation could start again in any marketplace in the world. A family that had invested in education, in skills, expertise, intellectual capital, carried their wealth inside their minds wherever they went. Education wasn't a luxury. It was the ultimate financial insurance policy. In your world today, that principle is more powerful than ever. Every high-value skill you develop is a financial investment. A coding course, a sales training, a professional certification, a language, a deeper understanding of investing. Every hour spent building a genuinely marketable skill increases your future earning capacity. And that return compounds the same way money in an account does. Here's the math made simple. A $2,000 course that raises your annual income by $15,000 delivers a 750% return in year 1. No stock, no property, no savings account matches that consistently. The Lavines sacrificed comfort to fund education, prioritized learning over leisure. And every generation that left that household carried not just inherited money, but inherited knowledge, which is infinitely more durable. It cannot depreciate, cannot be stolen, cannot be lost in a market crash. What are you investing in right now? Not your wardrobe, not your car, not your apartment. Your mind, your skills, your knowledge. In a world where everything external can change overnight, what you know is the only thing that is completely and permanently yours. 8 habits down, 4 to go. The first 4 built the foundation. These 4 protected what was built. But the final 4, habits 9 through 12, are the multiplication habits. The ones that answer the question your whole financial life has been building toward. How do you make sure what you build outlasts you? Habit 9 is where we start. And I told you at the beginning. It's the one that surprises people most. The one most of us are getting wrong every single week without realizing it. We're almost there. Most of us think about money in terms of months. How much did I earn? How much did I spend? How much is left? Some of us think in years, annual salary, savings goal, tax season. The Lavine family thought in decades, sometimes centuries. Elias didn't make financial decisions based on what felt good this month. He made them based on what would still be standing when his grandchildren were his age. That single shift, from months to decades, is what separates the families who accumulate wealth from the families who actually transfer it. These final 4 habits are built entirely on that long view. Habit 9. Delayed gratification. The habit most people are getting wrong every single week. Here's the habit I promised you. You've probably heard of it. And your first reaction might be, I already know this. Stay with me. Because knowing something and actually practicing it are 2 completely different things. And the gap between those 2 is exactly where most people's wealth quietly disappears. Every time your income increases, a raise, a bonus, a new contract, a side income, the Lavine family had one unbreakable rule. Your lifestyle does not rise with your income. The surplus goes into the portfolio, into the 3 circles, into the future, not into a better car, not into a bigger apartment, not into a wardrobe upgrade that signals to the world that things are going well. Economists call what most people do instead lifestyle inflation. Your income goes up $500 a month, and within 3 months, your expenses have absorbed every single dollar. You're back to the same financial position, just with more stuff. The Lavine family had a simpler name for it: eating the seed. Miriam said it to her children from the time they were young. If a farmer eats his seed corn, the grain he was supposed to plant for next season, he gets full today and starves next year. In every dollar of surplus you consume instead of invest is a seed you're eating instead of planting. Temporary comfort. Sacrificed compounding. Here's what the numbers actually look like. You get a raise of $400 a month. You absorb it into your lifestyle, as most people do. 10 years later, a slightly more expensive life and nothing extra to show financially. You invest that same $400 monthly at 8% annual return. 10 years, $73,000. 20 years, over $230,000. Same raise, completely different decision, completely different life. Nobody ever told you the raise was a test. Most people fail it not out of weakness, but out of unawareness. Now you're aware. The next time your income increases, decide before the money arrives. Automate the transfer the same day the increase hits, because money your lifestyle never sees is money your future self keeps. Solomon got a significant raise in his 3rd year. He bought a better car within the month. The car payment outlasted the good feeling of the raise. And the compounding return he could have built from that surplus never existed at all. Don't eat the seed. Habit 10. Tzedakah. Give first and watch what follows. Give money away first when I barely have enough. Rachel pushed back hard the first time she heard tzedakah discussed as a financial practice. She sat across from Nathan and said, with genuine frustration, "How does giving money away make me wealthier?" Nathan didn't argue. He just asked one question. "Rachel, have you ever noticed that the families in this community who give the most consistently are also the ones who seem to never run out?" She had noticed. She just hadn't understood why. Here's the architecture underneath it. Tzedakah is not charity the way most Westerners understand charity. The word comes from the Hebrew root tzedek, meaning justice or righteousness. It's not generosity when you have surplus. It's an obligation, a structural part of how wealth is managed, typically 10%, given before anything else is allocated. Here's what that does to you. When you commit to giving 10% before you spend a single dollar on yourself, something shifts in how you manage the remaining 90. You become more intentional, more disciplined. Because you've already proven to yourself that you can operate on less than you earn. And that proof, that lived experience of sufficiency, fundamentally changes your relationship with money. It also builds something in your community that no account balance can replicate. The person known for generosity, the one who shows up, who contributes, who supports others, is also almost always the person who gets the best referrals, the best opportunities, the best information first. Not because generosity is a transaction, because generosity creates a network of people who genuinely want you to win. Don't have 10% right now? Start with $5 a week. The amount is less important than the habit. The habit reshapes your identity from the inside out. Give first, especially when it feels difficult. And the families who wait until they feel wealthy enough to give almost never feel wealthy enough. The families who give first almost always find the wealth follows. Habit 11. Estate planning is not for the wealthy. It is how you become generational. David Lavine made his first will at 34. Modest property, small investment account, growing business, 2 young children, by most standards. Not enough to warrant formal estate planning, but Nathan sat him down and said something David never forgot. A will is not a document for the dying. It is a document for the living. It is the clearest statement you will ever make about what you value and who you trust. Here's what happens when families don't plan. Someone dies without a will. 2 things almost always follow. First, the legal system makes the decisions. And the legal system is expensive, slow, and completely indifferent to what the deceased actually wanted. Second, family conflict. Siblings who were united in life become adversaries in court. Assets get sold to cover legal fees. Decades of wealth get fragmented and dissipated in months. This is not the exception. This is the default outcome for families who don't plan. Remember the 3-generation curse from the beginning of this video? It's not primarily caused by bad investing, not by market crashes or economic downturns. It's caused by the failure to transfer not just money, but the systems, values, and structures that created the money in the first place. A will is the beginning of that transfer. A trust is the protection of it. A family mission statement, a documented set of values that defines what the family's wealth is for, is the soul of it. You don't need to be rich to start. You need to be intentional. Write a will. Speak to a professional about trust structures that match your situation. Have the conversation with your family about what your financial legacy is supposed to look like. Not when you're old, not when you're sick. Now. The Lavine family treated estate planning like the Shabbat table, a regular, ongoing, non-negotiable part of how they managed their collective financial life. Not a one-time event, a living process. Because wealth that is not intentionally transferred is wealth that is accidentally lost. Habit 12. Fellowship. Your network is your net worth. Nathan Lavine had a phrase he repeated so often every member of the family could finish it for him. He'd start, "A single thread breaks easily." The family would finish. But a rope of threads holds a ship. No family builds lasting wealth alone. The community you invest in, the relationships you cultivate, the network of trust you build over years, these are not peripheral to your financial success. They are the infrastructure of it. Jewish trade networks throughout history worked on a simple principle. When one member faced difficulty, others stepped in. When an opportunity emerged, it moved through the network first. When expertise was needed, it was available without transaction costs. Modern business calls this networking. The Lavines called it something deeper, a fellowship, genuine investment in each other's success as a form of collective self-interest. Ask yourself right now, who are the 5 people you spend the most financial energy around? Not just socially, financially. The people whose money habits shape yours. Whose spending you mirror without realizing it. Whose conversations either expand or shrink your sense of what's financially possible. Your financial outcomes are significantly shaped by the expectations of the people closest to you. When everyone around you treats a car payment as unavoidable, you treat it as unavoidable. When everyone around you treats investing as normal, you treat it as normal. Proximity shapes perception, and perception shapes every decision that follows. As the Lavines deliberately built relationships with people who were intentional, not necessarily the wealthiest people in the room, but the most purposeful. And over time, intentionality in the people around you compounds just like interest in an account. Invest in relationships with people who are building something. Share what you know. Contribute before you need anything in return. Build the rope one thread at a time. Isolated wealth is not really wealth, it's just money. And money without community, without purpose, without people who share your values and amplify your effort, that money is always one generation away from disappearing. 12 habits, 1 family, 3 generations of proof. 10 years after joining the Lavine family, Rachel sat at her own table, her own children in front of her, 3 jars between them. She said to her 7-year-old daughter the same 3 words Miriam had once said to her. Split it up. She watched her daughter deliberate over coins with the seriousness of someone making a real financial decision. Because she was. Rachel didn't rush her, didn't take over. She just watched, nodded, and let the lesson do what lessons do when they're experienced rather than just explained. In that moment, Rachel understood something no spreadsheet could ever capture. Wealth is not just money. Wealth is knowledge passed forward. Wealth is a 7-year-old learning that a coin is not just something you spend. It's a decision you make. Wealth is the habit that outlives the person who taught it. Wealth is the conversation at the dinner table that shapes how the next generation thinks about everything that follows. That is what Ladorvador means. From generation to generation. Here is what I need you to hear right now, directly. From me to you. You were not taught these habits. And that is not your fault. Nobody sat you down at 5 years old with 3 jars and explained how money actually works. Nobody showed you the 3 circles. Nobody told you the raise was a test, that debt is a choice, that your network is your net worth, that giving first is not a sacrifice. It's a philosophy that sustained entire communities through persecution and economic collapse for 2,000 years. You weren't taught these things because the systems around you were not designed to teach them. But you know them now. And that changes everything, not tomorrow, right now, in this moment. Most financial content ends by asking, how do I make more money? That is the wrong question. Solomon Goldberg made more money. It didn't save him. The right question, the one this entire video has been building toward, is this. What do I pass on? Not just to your children, to the people around you, to the version of yourself you are still becoming. What financial identity are you building? What habits are you practicing so consistently they'll eventually become invisible, woven into the fabric of how you think and act around money without you even noticing? That is what the Lavine family built. Not just accounts and properties and businesses, though they built those too. They built a financial identity that replicated itself. Habits so embedded that each new generation absorbed them naturally. At the dinner table, in the 3 jars, in 3 circles drawn on a piece of paper by a man named Nathan. I who understood that the most important investment any of us will ever make is in the mind of the person sitting across from us. Pick one habit from the 12. Just one. The one that hit you hardest. The one that made you think, I could have been doing this already. Start there, this week, not perfectly, just start. Draw your 3 circles and see which one is empty. Automate the split before your next paycheck lands. Make the one phone call to negotiate the bill you've been paying without question. One habit. Build it until it's invisible. Then add another. That's how the Lavines did it. One habit at a time, passed from one person to the next, until their relationship with money became so deeply rooted that no market crash, no economic storm, no generational transition could uproot it. Solomon Goldberg spent his whole life looking wealthy. Elias Lavine spent his whole life building wealth. One left his grandchildren a legacy, the other left them a lesson. You now know the difference between those 2 paths, and you know, 12 habits deep, exactly which one leads where. The only question left is the one only you can answer. Which family are you building? Because Lador Vador is not just a phrase from an ancient tradition. It is a decision you make today. It is the conversation you choose to have, or keep avoiding. It is the habit you choose to start, or keep postponing. It is the seed you choose to plant, or eat. The Lavine family made that decision in a tenement building on the Lower East Side. $40, a worn coat, and habits older than any financial institution that exists today. Not you're making it right now. Lador Vador. From generation to generation, make it count. If one of these 12 habits changed how you see your own financial life, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Lador Vador works in both directions. Pass it forward. See you in the next one.